Hello, welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for joining me today. We are going to go over all the new combos and spoilers that have been revealed for the last 3 days for Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering new set coming out next month. So let's jump right into it and see what cool combos and synergies we can find with these new cards. Starting with Matoya. By the way, again, I'm probably going to pronounce all these wrong, but I'll do my best. Uh, 3 mana for a 1/4, and it says whenever you scry or surveil, draw a card. That is quite a powerful line of text. Note you do draw after you scry or surveil, which is actually kind of nice because then you kind of get to control what you're going to draw next to some extent. Now, there's lots of cards in standard, and maybe in older formats there's even more. But I'm mostly focusing on standard for these reviews that let you just kind of scry or surveil pretty cheaply. And there's some cards like Gossip's Talent or the Snarling Gorehound that would trigger even when you play this guy. Whenever another creature comes into play or a creature with power 2 or less enters, you would get to surveil 1, which would let you just draw a card immediately off this, which would be pretty powerful if it just replaced itself, because this probably is going to eat removal if your opponent knows what you're up to with having a lot of scries or surveils. But if say that they don't have a removal spell, every time you play a creature now, you're gonna both surveil and draw a card. So you're gonna control what you're gonna draw to some extent and then draw a card. So you can kind of just like churn through your whole deck pretty quickly by playing a bunch of creatures and this guy. That seems pretty powerful. Even the Undercity Sewers, all these sort of scry lands that we have, and the surveil lands. There's even some that come into play untapped that tap for colorless. There's a whole host of lands in standard right now that you can just play the land, scry and draw a card, surveil and draw a card. Every time you play a land, drawing a card, and it isn't limited. It doesn't say you can only do this once per turn or something like that. So that's very powerful. Stuff like the Norn's Wellspring is whenever a creature you control dies, you scry one, and you put an oil counter on it. So maybe if you're sacrificing a bunch of your creatures, you're just scrying and drawing more creatures to sacrifice. So this card seems pretty powerful, definitely with its ability. And there's a lot of cards that you can kind of look back on and say, oh wow, that's really easy. It adds a little scry to it. Even some of the cantrips that scry when you cast them opt scries or scries one, I believe, opt. Scries one, and then so you would draw 2 cards off of Opt, I believe, which is really powerful. So this card just seems very, very good to me. Don't really have to work that hard to make it good, and wouldn't be surprised if it fits into some shell or some deck in standard. Just gonna figure out where the best place to find it is, but being able to draw tons of extra cards um, on this seems like a pretty good deal to me. All right, let's go to the next card, the Esper Origins. People are confused. This isn't referring to the color combination of blue, black, and white, but as a creature type, I believe, in Final Fantasy, the Espers. 2 mana sorcery here to surveil 2 and gain 2 life, and then the spell was cast from a graveyard. You exile it, put it into the battlefield transformed under its own control with a finality counter on it. So it does have a finality counter on it, which is good to know. Like just on the front side, not a great card. Surveilling 2, gaining 2. Of course, with the last card we just talked about, you'd actually draw another card with it. So that there's some synergy there potentially. But flashing back for 4 mana, and then you get on the other side, you get a 4/4 with which is a saga. Chapter 1, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a permanent card, put it into your hand. So note that this card itself is not a permanent card. So if you played 4 copies of this, there's some chances you would miss. However, you are surveilling, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, when you flash this back, you also get a surveil and gain 2 life, right? So there is a chance you would miss. Depends on how you build their deck with this, but mostly that reads kind of like just draw a card. I would say for the most part, no lands, creatures, artifacts, enchantments, planeswalkers are all permanent cards, but sorceries and instants are not. So it kind of depends on how you build your deck. But if you get to surveil before, then it's most likely you'll draw a card off this. Next chapter is you add 2 more green mana, and then third chapter, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. So again, you're going to sacrifice this creature on that third chapter. So it's only going to stay in play for 3 turns or kind of 2 turns. You only kind of really get to attack with it once or block with it. I guess blocking with it maybe for 2 turns, attacking with it once. So mostly using it for the abilities, not really the body here, but the abilities are strong. Being able to again draw an additional card, add additional mana, and then kind of overrun your team. It's pretty cool. Um, an interesting card, and definitely like a card that gives you extra value just by being in your graveyard, which is always nice. Like cards like Bloodghast and things like that that are just in your graveyard, and then there's some value because flashing this back is kind of what you will really want to be doing with it. You don't really necessarily want to just play it for 2 mana. If you can discard it to things like Souls of the Lost, for example, or Town Greeter, or there's lots of ways just to mill cards. And green has a ton of really good, powerful mill cards now with Town Greeter. Um, but black ways to like sort of discard like Liliana as well, things like that. You can just kind of put it into your bin and then flash it back, get some extra value that way. Pretty nice with Souls of the Lost as well because of its last chapter here, giving all your creatures +2/+2 and trample. Souls of the Lost can get pretty big pretty quickly, and having trample is really good on it if you can attack with it for the win, just because it gets chump blocked so easily otherwise. And the other card I was thinking of would be kind of interesting with this is like herd migration, because of the ramp ability here. So let's just say you play this fairly, you play this like in a domain deck or with the green overlord that gives you the land that has all land types, something like that. If you're able to get domain, if you play this on 2 and then on turn 4 you flash it back, right? You get to reveal the top card, maybe draw a card, and then on turn 5, you get to add 2 additional mana, so that jumps you up from 5 to 7. So you could play Herd Migration or some other 7 drop, right? And then the following turn, all the tokens from Herd Migration, all the 3/3 beasts would get +2/+2 on trample. So it wouldn't take too much just to make that a lethal attack. If you got 5 3/3s and then they all get +2/+2, that's 5 5/5s, which is 25 damage. If I'm doing my math correctly with trample. So that could be a nice curve there. This card seems, decently powerful in what it's doing and can give you some extra value just kind of by being in your graveyard. Doesn't seem like super like busted in what it's doing, but it's definitely an interesting card and not one. I don't know if we've seen like hits you can only flip it by flashing it back. It's kind of odd, but definitely a unique design and pretty cool card. And I think the power level is decent as well, and I could see it seeing some play. And you'd have to be sort of a graveyard deck matters most likely, or something where you're really using the abilities here. All right, let's move on to our next card, Astrologians Planisphere. Astrologians Planisphere. Is that right? 2 mana for an equipment. Job select, so you get a 1/1 colorless hero token and attach it to it. And it says equipped creature is a wizard in addition to its other types, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, and whenever you draw a third card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on the creature equipped for 2. Decently powerful card, I believe, and could go right into sort of like the red, blue, prowess decks that are so popular. Seems decent in there. I mean, some people are thinking this is like really good. I don't think this is that good because it doesn't have any evasion necessarily, and just making a giant creature isn't always that great. It is cool that you kind of get to equip it if they do kill the job select card, and you can put it on something else and make that bigger. And the clause of it gets an additional +1/+1 counter when you draw your third card each turn is interesting and kind of cool. Um, so for things like opt again that draws cards, there are like sleight of hand doesn't draw you a card, and like stock up doesn't actually draw the cards, I don't believe. So it wouldn't trigger that. But cards like opt or crash through, I was thinking could be really nice with this, because giving this potentially giant creature that you're building with this planisphere here, trample would be quite good, and it draws a card. So you're trying to get to that third card drawn to give an additional +1/+1 counter, which would be pretty nice. We are also getting quite a bit support for wizards in this set. It seems like blue, black, red, Esper, or not Esper, blue, black, red. What's the blue, black, red is basically the wizard color combination. Anyway, so we got Circle of Power, which is another new card that was previewed here, which is 4 mana for sorcery. Draw 2 cards, lose 2 life. So you can see the draw 2 cards actually would trigger the Planisphere, drawing your 1 card for your turn, and then the 2 cards would trigger that additional +1/+1 counter. So that's kind of cool synergy. Lose 2 life, then you get a 0/1 black wizard creature token with whenever you cast a non-creature spell. It deals 1 damage to each opponent. And then wizards you control get a power boost by 1 and gain lifelink. So that's a lot of stuff that this card is doing for 4 mana. It's a non-creature spell itself, so that would trigger all your prowess kind of effects, basically. You're getting drawing 2 cards, losing 2 life is obviously a downside, but it does put a additional wizard into play that will then ping your opponent for more, and it pumps all your wizards, and it gives them all lifelink. So that's a lot of abilities on one card. And giving this, say again, you're building like a big wizard here, basically, with a lot of counters on it. Giving that lifelink could swing the game and be very impactful. So I think Circle of Power is definitely has some potential for constructed. Given we'll have to see how many wizards kind of shake out. I haven't done like a big search into all the wizards, but there are some that are decent in standard right now. Slick Shot Show Off, I believe, is a wizard. Things like that could be pretty nice to give lifelink as well and boost its power. So yeah, I think the wizard sort of spell slinger deck is looking pretty good right now. So we'll see how it all shakes out, but those are some ideas there. Okay, next up, let's talk about the Ultima weapon, which is a 7 mana legendary artifact equipment, and it says whenever equipped creature attacks, destroy target creature and opponent controls. Creature gets +7/+7, and equip is 7. So a lot of sevens. This is from Final Fantasy 7. No surprise, I suppose, but really cool card and pretty powerful. Obviously, very expensive to play and equip. However, there are some cards in Standard that let you kind of get around both of those, both the cost and the equip ability. Probably the best one maybe is Danitha, because on its own, if you just play Danitha, this is in your hand or in your graveyard, you get to just put it into play directly and equipped to Danitha. So that would give you a 11/11 first strike vigilance lifelink whenever it attacks, destroy target of creature and opponent controls. That would end the game pretty quickly. If they don't deal with it, of course. Does Dialect go for the throat? Doesn't give it your creature protection from say those kinds of removal spells, maybe some burn spells. It would help quite a bit, but if that went unanswered, obviously that would win the game pretty quickly, take over the game. Magnetic Snuffler is another one that you can kind of use to cheat this into play. Or even One Last Job could be interesting. With its last ability, return an or an equipment from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to a creature. You could even reanimate another creature with One Last Job and equip the ultimate weapon to it. If the creature had haste, you could attack right away. So maybe there's something there with kind of a big effect. It might just be a bit too clunky, too slow. Magical Christmas Land for standard. I don't know. Probably something I'll be trying on the channel just to see, because it's some pretty cool equipment here and very powerful if you get it going. But yeah, those are kind of the ways. Maybe there's some other ways you can think of to use this, but those are the ways I could think of to kind of cheat on its really expensive um, cost and equip abilities. Okay, let's go to Ultima itself, the Origin of Oblivion, which is 5 mana for a 4/4 legendary god. Colorless here, flying, and when it attacks, put a blight counter on target land for as long as that land has a blight counter on it. It loses all land types and abilities and has tap to add 1 colorless, so kind of shuts down a land from having any color, turns into a waste, basically. Whenever you tap a land for colorless, you add an additional colorless. So there are wastes in this set, so you can play a bunch of those in your deck. If you wanted to have a bunch of colorless lands, there are all there's a bunch of other utility colorless lands that are probably just better to play, and all even the ping lands, the ones that do 1 damage to you with 2 colors on them, those can be tapped for colorless too. So you can play a bunch of those in your deck, because you basically, if you're playing Ultima in your deck, you want basically all your lands to be able to tap for colorless. Um, there's even some cards in older formats. I was thinking the what's called the Tyrite Sanctum, which cares about being the creature being a god. You can sacrifice it to put an indestructible counter on it, because this card really wants to be protected, I think. The worst thing is if you just play this for 5 and then they just go for throat it, and then you spend 5 mana, they spent 2 mana, and you're really down on mana there. So that would be a bad exchange, but if you can protect this card, it's incredibly powerful to be able to double all your mana. You could play things that cost like 9 mana, like that new summon card that costs 9 mana here. Or there's some other big artifacts in standard. Ugin, the new Ugin as well. Things that just double your mana, or even X spells. The ones that create like a bunch of rat tokens, things like that. You could use all the extra mana into, but this card is very powerful if you get to untap with it because one, it doubles your mana if it's colorless, and two, you get to attack with it and then start denying your opponent's mana, which is quite good too. So seems good if you can untap with it. That the problem is you won't necessarily always do that in standard, so you kind of have to build maybe your deck. If you're going to play this card, you're going to have to build your deck around it, like with Skrell to protect it, or just like discard spells to make sure they don't have like Deep Cavern Bat, Duress, things like that to make sure they don't have a removal spell, and then hope to untap with it and get the big benefits off of it. It might just not be fast enough in standard, too clunky. Who knows? But an interesting card for sure, and definitely powerful if you get to again untap with it. All right, let's move on to land here. The another town land that has an adventure on it. This one has the white one comes in play tapped, adds white, but you can also pay 5 mana to adventure, return up to 2 target artifact and or enchantment cards from your graveyard to your hand. Um, this one's interesting. I think it's better than the other two that they previewed so far, which were 6 mana for their adventure. 5 mana seems a little bit more reasonable to have something to like hold the land in your hand, a reason to like not play it as your land drop. And it can be kind of like a 2 for 1 and get back 2 things. It's interesting with stuff like Treasure's Insight here, because Treasure's Insight itself can mill this land as well as other enchantments and artifacts. And then you could return this land to your hand and then use that to return other things, or another Dredger's Insight and cast that and then return another one of these lands. I don't know, something like that. There's some synergy there. Or even Town Greeter can find this because it is a town and mill other stuff into your graveyard that you want to get back with this. So there's some interesting synergy there. The other thing I was thinking of is like maybe these town lands are decent with Zell or other cards. Maybe they'll have other cards in the set that let you return a land that's in play to your hand, because you could play it early and then use it for mana. Later in the game, you can return it to your hand and then use it for its adventure, and then play it again for the land side, and then return it back to your hand and kind of keep going with it over and over again. So there's something kind of interesting there. I don't know if there's other ways in standard to return lands to your hand that I'm not thinking about. Zell is the only one that came to my mind, but that seems like a decent use for these lands that if you can kind of reuse them over and over again, that's decently powerful. So yeah, those are kind of my ideas, and that would work again with all the other adventure lands that we've seen so far, and we haven't seen the red one or we've seen the green and the blue and the white. So I haven't seen the red or the black one. So we'll see what those do and evaluate them from there. And of course, seeing if there's any other town synergies that we get. Town Greeter is the only one I believe that really cares about lands being a town, but I have a suspicion there may be other synergies in the set about towns matters as a land, so land type. So yeah, we'll see. Okay, let's move on to Vincent, and this is a 4 mana 2/2, so bad stats, but it's legendary and an assassin. And it says whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to that creature's power, and then when it attacks, you can transform it into a 3/2 trample lifelink, and when it dies, you return it to battlefield tapped. So kind of nice insurance to get it back if it does die. Um, there's a few problems with this card. If you just play this on 4 and your opponent like shocks it or go for the throat, kills it, dies to like basically every removal. It is interesting if you have say 5 mana or 6 mana up, right, and you play this and then you like go for the throat one of your opponent's things right away and you pump it to like a 6/6 something like that right away. It seems decently powerful, and then it wouldn't die to as much removal. But that does require you to have a specific setup and a lot of mana. Um, so I don't know. How do you want to play this card? I think the way you would want it played is with cards. Either you need to protect it, like with duress, Skrell, things like that, to make sure your opponent doesn't have um, removal in their hand, Deep Cavern Bat, and then play this, and then the following turn, start killing the creatures, make a huge guy attack, trample lifelink, can kind of make up for the excuse me, the tempo loss that you had of just playing a 4 mana 2/2, which can't do much on its own. But it gets maybe your life back that you've lost earlier in the game. So, it could be interesting. It certainly could take over the game. Like the ceiling on this card is incredibly high. Like to be able to pay 4 mana and get a 6/6, a 10/10 trampling lifelink that when it dies, it comes back into play. That's incredibly good. But the floor is so low that like if you play this and they just kill it, it's horrible. So the other way you could use this is like just give it haste right away to flip it right away. So then it kind of gets you some sort of insurance against it dying. So if you had like a Frost Cliff Siege in play with the teamer mode, for example, or some other card that gave it haste, you'd play this, attack right away, flip it, hit them for 4 lifelink. Even if they blocked it, it could die. You could bring it back. At least you kind of get a 2-for-1 that way, right away with it. So that could be interesting. And then the other card I was thinking of this, which is again magical Christmas land here, but it would be ridiculous if you had unstable glyph bridge with this. It says when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, for each player, choose a creature with power 2 or less that that player controls, then destroy all creatures except the creatures chosen this way. So say this was your only creature, your opponent had like 3 or 4 other creatures out. You play Vincent, you play the unstable Glyph Bridge the next turn. You choose it because it has power 2 or less, and then you blow up your opponent's board. Turn this into like a huge like a 15/15 or something. You blew up a bunch of their big guys, and then attack for like 15 trample lifelink. I don't know. Magical Christmas land, but it's kind of interesting in the synergy it has with the Glyph Bridge. So just something that came to my mind when I was thinking about this card. Yeah, let me know in the comments below if you think this is decent or not. It really seems like such a super high ceiling, super high floor kind of card. I probably won't see too much play because of that. But if you build your deck around it in a certain way, it could be good. Well, this one is you kind of have to play with it and see. Okay, let's go to Moogles Valor. Such a cool card. 5 mana for an instant. For each creature you control, create a 1/2 white Moogle creature token with lifelink, and then creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. So this card again is like super high ceiling, super high or low floor with it. Like if you have no creatures out, it's 5 mana do nothing, um, which is just terrible. If you have one creature out, really not that great. But the more creatures you have, the better this is, obviously, because you'll get more Moogle. So you really want to play it in some sort of token deck, like maybe with Skrell's Hive, Voice of Victory, all the mobilized stuff could be kind of interesting with this. The Sinkhole Surveyor can make a token every turn, um, things like that. So you really want to kind of go wide, obviously, with this ability. And if you play it in the right spot, this card is like a huge blowout. I think this card could be pretty good in limited. I believe it kind of depends on the limited format, obviously, but could be quite a blowout in limited for sure. But in constructed, it really depends on opponent's removal. So maybe this is more of a sideboard card, and 5 mana is a lot to just like hold up. But they did spoil this other card, Ultima, which is destroy all artifacts and creatures and end the turn. This just counters that. If would destroy, I guess, artifacts, but um, if your opponent goes Ultima, haha, destroy your whole board, and you go Moogles Valor, make like 5 tokens, all my guys are indestructible, swing back for the win, kill you. Um, that would be pretty sweet. Or Day of Judgment is sort of like a 4 of in index and standard. That would be pretty good against that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, you can use it as a combat trick. Your opponent makes some blocks, and you kind of use this, or you block. Sorry, your opponent attacks you, and they're like, "Oh, I have a pretty good attack here." You have like 3 creatures out. They attack with all their stuff. You play this, you get 3 Moogles, and then you make really good blocks because all of your creatures are indestructible, and you just kind of destroy their board and build a big board yourself, gain some life. That maybe would be more common to happen in limited, but definitely this card again has really a high ceiling, but pretty low floor. So I don't know. I mean, again, I don't because of that. I probably won't see too much play, but it's just kind of interesting card design and pretty cute Moogles here. So I can't complain about that. All right, let's move on to our Choco. Seeker of Paradise. 4 mana, blue, white, and green for a 3/5 bird, legend. And whenever one or more birds you control attack, look at that many cards from the top of your library. You may put one of them into your hand and put any number of land cards among them onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest into your library or into your graveyard. Sorry. So could fill up your graveyard actually. And then Hustle has landfall to pump its power by one for each land. So the first ability can synergize with the second one. If you are hitting a bunch of lands off of that, you can pump its power during combat, or just trigger a bunch of landfall abilities in general. Could be interesting. Birds in standard, maybe we are certainly getting quite a few support. There's the traveling chocobo, which is quite good, I would say, in a bird deck, and there's a few others that I talked about in the first video. There's a 1 mana 1/1 with landfall, put a counter on it. That's a bird. We also have some birds from Bloomborough and other sets in standard already, like the Mockingbird. Castrol is pretty decent in bird decks, so maybe there's some sort of three-color bird deck going on here. I don't know. We'll have to see again how pushed they are going to make birds, but this card is good. It again, it really has a pretty high um, ceiling to it, in the sense that if you attack with like just two birds and you get draw two cards essentially and put two more lands into play, um, that's pretty powerful, and you can do that every turn. Birds tend to have evasion too, flying, although the chocobos don't seem to have flying, because I don't know if chocobos can fly or not. I don't think so. Doesn't look like it. But the birds that we have from Bloomborough and other sets tend to have flying, so attacking with them every turn maybe isn't too big of a problem. So yeah, this card is interesting and maybe could see some play, maybe if there's a good enough bird deck. But again, we'll see how it shakes out. I might just try it anyways because it sounds pretty fun. And chocobos are the best. But yeah, pretty cool card. All right, let's move on to some uncommons here. This is Freya Crescent, a 1 mana 1/1 legendary rat knight. I don't know if I've ever seen a rat knight in Magic before, but or this is not Magic really. This is Final Fantasy, I suppose. So pretty cool creature type, anyways. And it says jump during your turn. It has flying, and then tap to add a red. Spend this mana only to cast an equipment spell or activate an equip ability. So Landware Elves, I guess, maybe kind of with if you're playing all equipment, not bad. But any one drop that could potentially add 1 mana is definitely worth looking at, and it kind of has flying too, so some evasion during your turn, which is kind of cool. It is a rat too, so there are like rat synergies in standard. I just wasn't really considering that with this card, mostly for its ability to add extra mana for equipment. And we are getting quite a bit of equipment matters cards in this set, but so far we already have Cloud, which is a pretty decent one. There's another card that got spoiled here, the Samurai's Katana, which is 3 mana for job select, so you get a 1/1 colorless, and then it equips to it. It's a +2/+2, has trample and haste, and it's a samurai, and equipped for 5. So essentially 3 mana for a 3/3 trample haste. Not bad as an equipment, and you could even do that turn 2 if you played this on 1, the Freya on 1, Samurai's Katana on 2, smash for 3. Not a bad curve. Also curves nicely into the Blade Hold War Whip. There's a lot of other equipments that you could potentially play. Aether Spark, things like that, that could be decent with this if you're kind of getting them out a turn earlier. But yeah, let me know in the comments below if there's any other cool equipments that you're looking forward to playing with, or you think the equipment deck is going to be decent. But I do think this card, if it is, if the equipment deck is playable, this card will be an important piece of it, because a 1 mana 1/1 that taps for 1 mana is a very powerful thing. Also, to point out, this card has flying, which can be quite relevant with if you're playing a bunch of equipment. To equip onto this thing, you can to have flying is useful, like the swords and things like that. To when you hit your opponent, they trigger addition, an ability. This can be quite good to have some evasion on it as well. So yeah, this card seems pretty good to me in equipment style deck. Okay, let's go to the bhed salvagers. Pronounced that wrong, probably. 3 mana for a 2/3. And it says whenever this creature or another creature or artifact you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. So this is kind of a blood artist effect. It is only your creatures, I believe, you control, but it does also trigger off of artifacts, which is very interesting. Um, and synergizes really well with like Bartholomew, because that can sacrifice artifacts too. So any creatures or artifacts. So basically, you could sacrifice your whole board with Bart and ping your opponent. If you had just like artifacts like treasure tokens, this would trigger, I believe, as well, or just any other artifacts, clue tokens, things like that you sacrifice. This would also trigger. So this card seems good and pretty powerful to me, if you kind of have the synergies built in with it. And also we have what pitiless carnage, which you can plot or just use it for 4 mana to sacrifice all your creatures and all your artifacts. Draw a bunch of cards, ping your opponent, maybe kill them that way. So yeah, I don't know. There certainly could be built around this card, and also if there's some like infinite loop where you're sacrificing an artifact over and over again. I can't think of anything off the top of my head in standard besides the that the Gold Kiru Goldkeeper loop that I built on the channel a couple weeks ago. But that one kills your opponent by milling anyway, so you don't necessarily need this. But maybe there's some other loops or cards that combos that this would work really well, and definitely a combo piece, an enabler to kind of keep your eye on and see where it fits. So yeah, that's why I'm pointing out this card. And then lastly, we got the summon Esper uh, Ramuh. And that was wrong. 4 mana for a 3/3, and first mode is the creature deals damage equal to the number of non-creature, non-land cards in your graveyard to target creature and opponent controls. Um, and then wizards you control get pumped by 1 power on the last 2 modes here. So an interesting card, kind of a playing Tonkabu, if you will, that can kind of kill your opponent's stuff if you have some non-land, non-creature permanents or cards in your graveyard, which isn't too hard to achieve right now. And this fits well with wizards, pumping up all your wizards themes. We talked about wizards being decent, maybe. As a theme in standard. But the reason I wanted to point out this card is because the I don't know how to pronounce this other card, Tectathal, I believe. This is, I believe, the only way to remove counters from creatures, which is interesting with summons, right? Its last ability says 3 mana or 1 and 2 hybrid mana, remove 3 counters from among other artifacts, creatures, and planeswalkers you control, and put an indestructible counter on this. Um, so if you have some summons going and you remove the counters from them, it goes back to 0, and then the saga starts over again, right? So you can kind of reset your sagas here over and over again. So you can kind of kill your opponent's creatures every turn, just use the first ability over and over again. So that's interesting. I don't know if it's good, but it is interesting. It's something to kind of keep in mind with all these saga creatures. There are some other cards that remove counters, but this one just can do it over and over without having to like attack um, or anything like that. So there's something to kind of keep in mind with the saga creatures and an interesting synergy. All right, so that is it for the last few days. The cards that I thought were really noteworthy and interesting and had some cool combos and synergies. Let me know below in the comments below any other ideas with these cards. Are you enjoying Final Fantasy spoiler season so far? Any cool combos that you're looking forward to trying out, or anything I missed? So again, we'll be having some more of these spoilers. The spoilers are going to last, it seems, through the end of the month. So I'll be covering them every few days as we kind of get a bunch. There's only like a few cards spoiled every day, but it's kind of nice to have like a slower trickle over time. So I'll be covering the spoilers, but maybe not every day. Every third day or so, I'll put out a video when there's enough to make a video for them, talking about my ideas for the cards, and have some gameplay videos as well in between. And of course, as soon as the set drops on Arena, I'll be having some gameplay of some sweet new standard decks with Final Fantasy cards. So, again, let me know what you think about it all in the comments below. Really appreciate you watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.